Coming to you live from a world where a society of intelligent dogs rules the world. It certainly sounds like a great idea for a board-driven animated show. This is Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast. I know I'm not supposed to.
It's great. It's great when you do it live, Brandon, because then I get to hear it, and I never get to hear it usually. But then we can just kind of roll right into the show. It's like an intro for me too. It's nice. It's nice. Well, hey everybody, I'm Travis.
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon.
And welcome to another episode of Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
The unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
So pleased that you could join us for another episode as we wander our ways through the season that was season 1 of Rick and Morty. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. As I mentioned before we started recording, today is a day where I just feel super uncomfortable with no matter what my position is, sitting or standing or where my computers are. Everything is just, it feels out of whack. But I'm really excited.
Everything feels wrong. Nothing is right.
For the folks who
podcast.
For the folks who are watching this, you'll see that we have our merch set up for today's episode, and Travis can attest that I spent about 15 minutes just trying to get 2 figurines to stand up.
Way too much time. But it's one of the nice things about going back and looking at these season 1 episodes is we have toys, we have merch from classic episodes, classic characters that we can feature on the video version of the podcast.
Classic
stuff. Let's get into our how people can reach us on social media. Of course, hit us up on Twitter at Rick and Morty Pod, over on our subreddit rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com, facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. Emails, we do the email thing, rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com, and then you can head over to apatheticenthusiasm.com where you can get the link for our TeePublic site. Get yourself a shirt with our cartoon faces on it. If that's what you're into. Or get that Unity shirt that says "Hi, my name is Unity." Anything, whatever. And then for those of you that want to watch the video version, head over to our Patreon site, patreon.com/rickandmortypod, where you can sign up to help support the show and get some perks along the way as well. Yeah, get some perks. Like Central Perk, like in Friends. Yeah, this is a Friends podcast now. Let's talk about being on a break with Rachel.
If we have any new listeners, I just want to throw this out there, just to give you a primer on what this show is. Travis and I, we talk about Rick and Morty, and with season 3 down the hatch, as they say in the business, the hatch business.
Yeah, mostly in hatch businesses.
Right. Over in the Hatch Chili Festival as well. We're going through season 1, and we're going from there. And it's fun. Travis and I we have fun. And to our longtime listeners, Unity, as always, thank you for listening.
Yeah. So with that said, Brandon, I think it's time to get into our first and most predictable. It's always there from, I think, the very first episode.
Yeah.
Our first segment. It's time for semi-pertinent news.
Pertinent news.
One of my favorite things is that now you have a soundboard and you could easily like write music for segments. We're still going with the off the cup improvised stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So first bit in semi-pertinent news is something that you and I debated whether or not we were going to bring up on this show even to begin with. But that is and it started almost, I think it was the day after we recorded our last episode. But Dan Harmon had tweeted something about sort of 2018 being a year for not being like an asshole or something like that, and changing who he is or acting in a different way. And it was responded to by Megan Gantz, who has she was a writer on Community, one of Dan Harmon's previous shows, and had dealt with a lot of abuse from him. And in a time where Dan Harmon is very vocal about some of the harassment and abuse cases that are out there in the media right now, he responded very quickly and acknowledged the situation. He apologized on Twitter, but also didn't know what he could do to make it right. But he seemed very repentant and wanted to make it right, and she was somewhat open to it, but also didn't feel like there was any tweet, 280 characters or not, that could have fully made up for that. So then he went on to Harmontown this last week and did a lengthy apology on there and explained the situation. Did you get a chance to listen to that, Brandon?
I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I went to the mall and I was looking around Hot Topic for some new Funko Pops, which is later down in the news segment. But anyways, no, so I didn't, but I did read some of the transcript from Harmontown and also Megan Gantz's response to his apology on Harmontown. So you listened to it, I imagine.
Yeah, and so I typically try to catch each episode of Harmontown as it comes out, and I hadn't listened to the episode once sort of the stories broke about the apology, but I made sure to listen to it, and it happens relatively early in the podcast. I want to say it's like 7 or 8 minutes into the episode, and if you've never listened to a Harmontown episode, it is Dan Harmon. He's got a couple of regular people that come on with him, and it's sort of improvisational. They don't usually have. Sometimes they have guests. Usually they do sort of like a D&D session at the end of it, but it's very much just kind of like a live performance comedy sort of deal. But 7 minutes into the episode, like, it becomes very quiet, very somber, and Dan Harmon goes into an apology where he talks about his own faults. He talks about mistakes that he certainly made and owns them. He doesn't try to run from them. He doesn't try to give himself an excuse for why he did certain things. And I don't know if you have some of those quotes from the interview or from the apology. But it was some heavy stuff, and it was very at times hard to hear, but also very interesting to hear because he gives some advice as well.
I did want to grab some of the audio to put it in here on the soundboard, but I forgot. So, but
okay,
but I do have some quotes. He does say, "I certainly wouldn't have been able to do the abuse if I had any respect for women. On a fundamental level, I was thinking about them as different creatures. I was thinking about the ones that I liked as having some special role in my life. And I did it all by not thinking about it, and I got away with it by not thinking about it. And if she hadn't mentioned something on Twitter, I would have continued to not think about it." And so his whole thing is Megan Gantz, after she went on Twitter after he recorded the episode, and she did like a little Twitter thread, and she says, "Here's a weird one for you. Last week I called out my former boss at Dan Harmon for sexual harassment, and today I want to ask you to listen to his podcast. I'm not being flippant. I didn't bring up this mess just to sweep it back under the rug, but I find myself in the odd position of having requested an apology publicly and then having received one, a good one, also publicly." And then at the end of the thread, she basically says to Dan Harmon, "I forgive you." So this isn't a Dan Harmon apology podcast, but
no, but as a Rick and Morty podcast in an off season that could last who knows how long, certainly we should discuss any sort of semi-pertinent news to the show, and one of the show's creators having a situation like this sort of become I don't know. I mean, it wasn't as big of a news story as some of the scandals that we've heard recently, but especially if you follow the show, it was a pretty big deal, and so it was good to hear him say those things. Obviously, I would never accuse Dan Harmon of being perfect, and even though he makes a show that I really like and have a podcast about, that doesn't somehow make him holier than thou or anything like that. So,
Yeah, I just want to say, like, there's people, I think, in everyone's life who we say, oh, that guy's an asshole, or that person's an asshole, but they're my asshole, right? A
right.
little bit. Um, and and so when the news first came out, I thought, we know Dan Harmon's an asshole. He is self-admittedly, like, his Harmon block 2017. I love it, like, just what he
Right.
says to me.
Yeah.
Um, but he is a man who I feel recognizes his faults and wants to be better. Like, just listening to Whiting Wong's with Jessica Gao, like, he's trying, and he's
Right.
he's learned some lessons, and he's still learning lessons. And I think
Well,
that's what comes from all this.
and I think just the final thing we'll say on this, and sort of the call to action, if there is one for this, is the fact that he talks about how he got away with these things and then sort of continued moving on from it by not thinking about it, right? And that's one of the things that right now I think it is important that everybody doesn't use that as an excuse, especially in terms of harassment or abuse. You need to think about it. Whether it doesn't matter who you're working with, it doesn't matter if you're working for someone or they're working for you, if you are colleagues and co-parts or peers, but you need to think about these sorts of situations and have them on the forefront of your mind,
Yeah.
because it isn't an excuse, and so I think that's good for. I mean, I'm gonna try not to harass you as much, Brandon, because I'm thinking about it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Travis. Okay, moving on, Travo, claptrap from Borderlands. Uh, this is
Okay.
this is pop news. No, this is great news. This is great news right here. Rick and Morty, they won Best Animated Series for the 2018 Critics' Choice Awards.
Ba-ba.
Boom.
Where's that thank you?
My man.
Thank you. There we go.
There it is. We're learning. We're getting used to those. But yeah, I mean, I one of my favorite things about this news nugget is how many producers or writers for the show didn't
Had no
even know
idea.
that they were nominated for the Critics' Choice Awards, and then found out like on Twitter when it was announced. They
Yeah.
did in fact have an award show, but it was on the CW, so nobody watched it.
Right.
And yeah, they won. So awesome recognition. I think the Rick Lantis mix up alone would be an argument for more awards to come. Are they
Fantastic.
nominated for any Emmys? I don't know. Let's do the research before the Emmys happen.
Yeah. Yes. Let's please. So, anyways, congratulations to everyone who's worked on the show, and hey, here's to 2019.
Yeah. They will not be eligible because you have to actually have a show in 2019.
That's accurate. And our last bit of semi-pertinent news is over on the Pop Funko side of the house. They are coming out with some new Rick and Morty, obviously porcelain or whatever that fabric, that material is. Vinyl. Oh yeah, lots of those vinyls. Vinyl pops and some plushes. Now they got. Okay, so Rick's ship. So they got Rick in a Rick ship. They have Rick in like the post-apocalyptic car. They've got Morty with Armathy. There's two different ones. There's like a limited edition Armathy with a bloody hand. There's post-apocalyptic Summer, Hemorrhage, Buckethead, and this is the one I want. This is the fucking one I want, Travis. It's the Facehugger Rick, and you remember what that's from, right?
I I do now because
Right.
I asked you when you sent it to me because I didn't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a bit of an Easter egg from the Alien like trailer commercial that they did. What was that last? That was like middle of the season last year, right?
Yeah, for Alien Covenant, man. So Rick and Morty, they go on the derelict alien ship, and then Rick gets caught with a face hugger, and then the face hugger immediately dies because Rick is so intoxicated that the alien can't survive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the new pop is face hugger on Rick's face. I
Yeah,
need it.
that just marries up so much stuff that is important to you in your pop culture life. So I can definitely see that resting up on your shelves. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about the new pops coming out. I still gotta grab me one of the pickle Ricks with the like the rat armor on.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of surprised by the number of figures that they're making and the specific like designs of the figures from particular episodes or even just particular parts of an episode. Which I mean, it's cool, and hopefully we see a lot more of them. But like, I think the first 3 episodes or something are now represented with pop vinyl, and then even like a 30-second commercial or whatever it was that they've created. So excited for more things to come. If you guys get a chance to get your hands on any of these, or maybe you have one that you particularly like, hit us up on our social media with stuffs and let us know what pop vinyl figures you guys have or the ones that you're most excited about.
Heck yes, Travis. Heck yes. Okay. Unity. Here we go. We're gonna go into our next segment, and this is a brand new segment. And guess what? I made music for this segment.
Real, actual music.
And it's not great, so forgive me. But I spent probably way too much time putting this music together for as little payoff as it is. But we're gonna introduce now. Oh, actually, should we do the title first? Should we talk about the title? Let's do the title. Let's talk about the title first. So here's the thing. We put it out there originally as like Fantasy Battle League. That's kind of
yeah. We talked about it last week. Obviously, we're talking about our situational fantasy battles. We did one last week based on an email where we talked about who was it? Squanchy versus who was it? Oh, the discreet assassin, Crumbopulous Michael. But yeah, and we threw this out to you guys on Twitter, asked you guys what we should call the segment, and lots of you responded. So thank you very much to everyone that responded. But what were some of the names that people came up with, Brandon?
So over on Twitter, we had from that Vault Hunter, Interdimensional Blitzkrieg. That was a good one. I like this one. Ramped Up Rick and Morty podcasts, the ultimate fighter with a PH.
PH. My favorite way to spell words that start with F.
From at AH _ Tariq. Rick-tastic Blood Dome from our friend Gorin93. And then the last one, which is also from Gorin93, Blood Dome Draft League. Yes. And I put this out there. I put this out there to the masses, and I said, "Hey, it's a fan contest to name the segment." So we took that and we modified it a little bit.
We did. So we decided we get a say too. So
we're not. I'm not gonna say it out loud. I'm just gonna let the music do the talking.
Oh.
Okay. So here it is. Here's the world premiere.
Enough build-up. Come on, let's go.
Okay.
Welcome to the next iteration of the Blood Dome Battle League.
Oh yes, that's right. The Blood Dome Battle League.
Blood Dome Battle League.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone for your title suggestions. If you have been a long-time Apathetic Enthusiasm listener, and I'm sure all of you are, we've done a couple of fantasy like draft type events on there. We've done Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead. I really didn't want this to have fantasy in the title so much. And we're not drafting anybody per se. It's sort of at random. But I definitely love the inclusion of Blood Dome in here. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for the suggestions. And the Blood Dome Battle League is here for, I don't know, the foreseeable future until we get tired of it. But
Yes, sir.
Brandon, why don't you go ahead and kind of roll through who we have in the Blood Dome this week?
Absolutely. Travis, this week we've got Tuberculosis versus Jaguar. Originally, we talked about doing it with grapple shoes, but at the end of the day, I was like, I don't know if we need the weapons.
They're inconsequential. They're not that important.
So let's get on to the results.
Are you going to always do it in that voice? Is that a thing now? Should I buy you stuff to like gargle with after we do episodes?
So here's a couple of comments before we get into the actual results, and you tell us. Everybody knows who won this one, obviously, but you tell us who you think won. Well, only one of them can die, and let's face it, Jaguar has never died. Trained assassin, greater than dormant disease. Danny Trejo, greater than everything. Don't disagree. Even his head on a tortoise in Breaking Bad is there. Purely depends on the mental game. If Jag thinks he's fighting for his daughter, he takes on that shit. Easy win. If not, he'll die a coffee mess. Since he learned the truth already, it goes to TB. Ooh. And that's not for Tampa Bay.
Someone throwing their name in the hat for tuberculosis. Wow. Yeah. All right.
Yep. And then Tyler Tigno, between TB and Jaguar, I'd have to go with my man Jaguar. I mean, I don't care if he was just a pickle. Jaguar went toe-to-toe with Rick and lived. So, in the end, Travis.
That's a strong argument. Overall, from the polls that we put out there, what were the final results?
Twitter, 74% to 26 in favor of Jaguar. Facebook, 89 to 11 in favor of Jaguar. So, as you can see, it was a close match.
Yeah, neck and neck the whole way through.
Heck yeah. So Jaguar won the hell out of this. So one of the things we Travis and I wanted to do, we didn't want to just be like, hey, here's a poll and take the poll and okay, cool, Jaguar beats tuberculosis. We wanted to come up, also use the win to come up with like a fantasy, Travis, fantasy situation, and we wanted to actually write a narrative or put a story together behind it. So Travis, why don't you take the story I wrote?
You want me to read your story?
Yes. Take the story I wrote and tell us what happened. Give us a little narrative.
Brandon, as far as I'm aware, it's a pretty straightforward affair. During a routine mission, Jaguar gets intel that his daughter might still be alive through some convoluted conspiratorial web. It ends in him in a secret center for disease control. And once there, he discovers that the site is completely locked down. Breaking in, he finds bodies of scientists strewn about, bloodied with holes in their chests. He walks through the building a little bit more and hears knocking from a closet. Opening it up, he sees a survivor whose chest almost immediately bursts. Terrifying. It's terrifying, Brandon.
Let me just throw this out there. So I did a little bit of research on TB, and it can lie dormant for a very, very long time.
Wow.
Go ahead, Travis. Continue on.
A dormant enlarged tuberculosis jumps at Jaguar. The cell screeches, and soon hundreds of dormant TB cells are making their way at Jaguar. He manages to fight them off, but there are so many. He retreats to one of the labs where he finds an enlarging machine and decaying bodies of what look to be transients.
Hobos, as they say. I'm trying to tie it together with the episode.
I got you. He manages to start a fire using a combination of chemicals found in the lab, escaping from the CDC facility. He turns his back and walks away, hearing the screeches of TB just as the entire building explodes.
Yeah.
He didn't get what he came for, but the CDC better pay him as the best damn disease controller around. Congratulations,
Finn.
Jaguar. Well done on your victory this week. Thank you.
My man.
Thank you so much to everybody for your responses. Hopefully you like the way this turned out. If you don't, hit us up on Twitter or over at Facebook and let us know what you think. And now it's time to pick next week's battle. Who's entering into the Blood Dome next week?
This week on the Blood Dome, we have, and this is coincidental, Dream Centaur versus Baby Legs.
Baby Legs.
Dream World.
I added the Dream World.
I added the Dream World.
All right.
I don't know why.
It potentially could be the only place that Dream Centaur exists. So,
yeah,
I'm not ruling it out.
Who knows? But hey, everyone, we're going to put the poll out there like we did before on Facebook and Twitter. Head out there. Let us know who you think will win between Dream Centaur and Baby Legs. And until next time, this is the Blood Dome Battle League.
Great. I like that we have outro music that's produced right before we get into what everyone is actually here for. Now that we spent the last almost half hour getting to it, but Brandon, you know what time it is. It's time for the main thing. I'm not gonna let you say it because you gotta sing. It's time for the main thing, Brandon.
MAINTHANG, main thing, main thing. I'm talking about the MAINTHING, main thing. I don't know how to spell.
I like that we write it out as main thing with an A, but your higher education has told you that that's wrong, and your subconscious still throws the I in. All right, everybody. Yes, that's right. It's time to talk about Lawnmower Dog, the second episode of Rick and Morty. Originally aired December 2nd, 2013, written by Ryan Ridley, directed by John Rice. A classic episode. Classic.
Is that the right date? Do we have the right date there? You keep talking. I'm going to look up and just double check.
It probably isn't. Because I fixed the written by and directed by. It's probably not the right date, actually. And so you just go on to Wikipedia and you.
No, it is. It is. December 9th, 2013.
Oh, a week later.
Yes,
okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like it was a week later than the last episode we talked about.
That's right.
But yeah, so we are gonna kind of go over our thoughts on this episode. But something sort of exciting happened this week with the official Rick and Morty subreddit. We got in contact with some of the mods over there, and hopefully the conversations that we're having on this episode about Rick and Morty, we're trying to find ways to tie in with the rewatches that they're doing over there. Do you want to elaborate on that any more, Brandon, at this point, or do you want to maybe cover it at the end of the section?
I blacked out. We will. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the Reddit stuff at the tail end. But I do want to say that we partnering up with them and using some of their discussions that are already out there, and some of the research they've done. Look, they told me we could do it. They said, yeah,
they begged us to.
Take whatever you
practically
want.
Begged us to.
There were pictures of just people begging. It was kind of uncomfortable. Anyway,
but I mean we're like fine, I guess. No. And the first way that I want to highlight that relationship is by using their synopsis from their rewatch post. So Lawnmower Dog covers Morty's small white dog Snuffles, who gets on the nerves of the family. So Rick quickly builds a knowledge-enhancing helmet for the dog. In the meantime, Rick and Morty decide to incept the dreams of Morty's math teacher, Mr. Goldenfold, in order to convince him to give Morty A's in math. While the duo are sent on an epic dream world journey, Snuffles slowly gains sentience, which leads to a slew of even more problems. Very concise, very well written. I don't know if that's off the back of the DVD or not, but well done. There were not enough bros for it to be the one that's released like in the TV Guide or whatever.
Yeah, like on Hulu.
Yeah.
Oh, Rick's gonna make a dog smart, bro.
Oh, they're gonna get some crazy stuff in those dreams, bro.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lawnmower Dog episode 2. Travis, just to start off, like, where does this episode rank on your all-time Rick and Morty episodes?
Oh wow! If we're gonna do this every week, I'm gonna get an aneurysm.
We don't have to.
I don't. It ranks probably pretty high. I think it establishes a couple of characters that are classics. And when you think about Rick and Morty merchandise and some of the characters that people go back to or lines that are quoted most often, I think there are a couple of them that pop up in this early episode. I mean, we do get to see Mr. Goldenfold in the pilot, but we get to kind of get to know him a little bit more as they travel through his dreams, and then obviously Snuffles / Snowball and Scary Terry are classic characters that many people have fallen in love with, have gotten ink on their bodies of characters and things like that. So I definitely would rate this in the upper 50%. That's for sure.
Wow, that's
high praise. I know. What about you? Is this your favorite episode of all time?
Yeah, by far. Between this and Interdimensional, Rick Minutes. Yeah, but between that, like this is up there, and the reason when I first started watching, and the Scary Terry stuff happened, and the mixing it up with Inception, to me was like such. We talked about pop culture, right? Like combining things like pop culture, like the Alien and Rick, and two things that I enjoy a lot of that go together in an intelligent, clever way. When I talk about the show being clever, like this. Thanks, Ryan Ridley. Like, this was a clever concept, and so I love it. So, yeah, I put it in the upper 25%. Hey. Travis.
Yeah, and I don't, and that doesn't surprise me about you, especially with
what
your.
The
fuck? Well, no, you know what it means. What it means is you're crazy about horror films and some of the things that are central to this episode. Also, just parallel things that kind of pique your interest that are outside Rick and Morty. So yeah, I mean, awesome, good stuff. One of the things about it, like you talk about the pop culture references and things like that. I wouldn't say that those were as apparent in the pilot. It was more like generic sci-fi,
rigmarole
craziness. Yeah. But this is clearly like, okay, we are taking cues from other movies, other, pop culture icons, and we are infusing that into this show. And that's sort of carried through the rest of the season and the rest of the series. So this is sort of that first, schwack where they're like, all right, we're going to do an Inception thing. It's going to have a sort of Freddy Krueger dude in there, and just roll with it. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about before on our last episode was the amount of time in between the pilot and this episode, right? Because essentially there was a year in between the pilot and Lawnmower Dog, and so I wonder how much of that during that time was okay, cool. Where do we actually take this show? What do we start using for material? And I know how I am. Like, even with that narrative for Jaguar versus tuberculosis, I needed like have like those like spacey horror synths in the background, because to me I was like Jaguars in like a quasi horror movie, like a horror action movie. That's how I felt about it. And so like in pop culture, like I just in like this episode, just starting pulling the stuff together and mixing and matching tropes, which is what Lawnmower Dog is. So.
Yeah, I think when you get to the core of Rick and Morty and the fact that deep down at a base level, it's loosely based on Back to the Future. Doc and Marty turns into Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Like I think it's weaved into the DNA of the show, and so it doesn't feel completely wrong to start taking those things. And the fact that they call them out like in the dialogue where they're like, hey, if you don't like this idea, then that movie everybody loves is stupid too. and when they're like explaining that, oh, Scary Terry has swords for hands instead of knives, so
he's a legally
they don't
safe
get any legal
knockoff
troubles
of an '80s horror character with miniature swords for fingers instead of knives.
Like those things, they start to cement the voice of the show and the way that they're going to take those things that we're all familiar with, but they're going to spin it in a way that is distinctly Rick and Morty.
Right. Travis, because you've watched this episode multiple times. I've watched it multiple times, dozens of times. In Unity, we're absolutely sure that you've seen this probably way more times than we have even. I don't know if we necessarily need to go beat by beat with the episode, but so Jerry, it can't handle Snuffles now.
Who self-identifies as Snowball?
Yes, self-identity. Yeah, he is sick of Snuffles being a dumb dog, essentially.
Being a dog, period. Just like the moment at the beginning of this episode when the dog is looking at Jerry and he's like, "What? Do you want to go outside?" And he gets up and walks across the room and opens the door, and Snuffles just looks at him. I've had that interaction with my dog more times than I can count. I think it happened to me today, like where like my dog is just like looking at me and I'm like, "You want to go out? What do you want?" And thankfully my dog didn't pee on the carpet immediately afterwards. But yeah, I mean it's like a normal dog thing.
Right. So they get Rick to create this intelligence helmet, puts it on Snuffles, and then obviously the dog gets smarter, overthrows humanity in pretty short order. So what I wanted to ask Travis was, I mean, what does that say about humanity, the wanting to always make their life so much easier at the expense of their freedom in the end?
Ooh, deep question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we as a society are giving up a lot of, I don't know if they're freedoms or at least levels of privacy for the sake of convenience. I know a lot of people that won't throw like an Amazon Echo in their house because they don't want to make it easier for people to wiretap them. By putting an active microphone in their house at all times.
Yeah.
So but then you can turn the lights on with your voice. So, you decide. And yeah, I think at a bigger level you can make that argument that people are willing to let technology go to a point that may be detrimental. But for me, I think that the better dynamic here is sort of the way that Jerry thinks of a dog as less than himself, and that he is superior. And then by the end of this episode, when the dogs are clearly superior to Jerry, he still like thinks that he's going to assert his dominance by stooping to their level, pissing on their weapons and taking a shit on the floor or something. Like, it's completely backwards. And so I don't know.
This is a weird moment to love in the episode, but when Jerry like pulls down his pants to take a shit, like he has like a little tan line. I don't know.
He also like walks in a circle, which if you listen to the episode commentary was like something that was discussed at length in the writer's room, really kind of getting Jerry to do that thing that dogs will do where they kind of walk around before they commit to a Duke on the rug. But
So one of the questions over on the Reddit discussion was Rick is able to increase Snuffle's intelligence fairly easily. What other ways could you see him dabbling with intelligence of those around him, including himself?
Oh, okay. Like sort of throughout the series.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
specifically in this episode. I don't.
yeah, you could do both. I don't give a shit. Whatever you want to do, man. It's your show. You just say
Our
words
show.
and then
It's our show, Brandon. It's everyone's show. Well, one of the things that, I mean, if we just want to stick to this episode, is the fact that the A plot to the B plot that is the Smiths and Snuffles is that Rick is doing this whole Inception journey to get Morty A's in math. And the reason is because he wants Morty to not have to go to school and not have to do math so that he can go on all of his zany sci-fi adventures. But at the same time, you could argue that he's trying to keep Morty at Morty level and isn't trying to make Morty smarter than he has to be. So, I mean, you could argue that Rick is using a form of manipulation via incepting people's dreams to try and skew intelligence and manage other people's intelligence.
yeah, I can see that. There's those thoughts out there that a smart Morty becomes evil Morty, right? So we want to avoid that. Rick probably wants to avoid that in those particular discussions. Rick has done other stuff, like even in the pilot with the mega seeds,
Right.
up in Morty's bunghole. Like it makes him really, really smart. And I think there was maybe a discussion somewhere, or a theory saying that hey, maybe Rick uses mega seeds to keep himself really, really smart.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Like the theory that his flask isn't actually booze, but it's like some sort of mega seed juice that he's using to keep his intelligence in check. I think it's just liquor.
Hogwash.
Yeah. But it is interesting, the follow-up question to that, asking, is Rick truly the smartest man in the universe, or is he just really good at convincing everyone that he is? I think there's evidence beyond this episode to support the fact that Rick is the smartest guy around. But what do you think? I mean, do you think that's been decided, or?
I feel like it's a pretty clear conclusion that if he's not the smartest person in the room, he is damn near the smartest person in every room he'll be in. Because at this point in time, I think you need the rest of the series to look at for it. But the times that he is not in control is him taking himself out of control. Right. And which is in a weird way a form of having control, right? Knowing that you can come back from the edge of eternity, just it says how smart he is, right? So yeah, I don't think he needs to convince anybody.
I'll tell you what, I'm convinced.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, it's late and I'm drinking Bloody Marys. I'm sorry.
There you go. Well, let's shift gears here then a little bit. One of the other questions out on the discussion was that this episode has a ton of side characters that, despite only showing up once, still have become fan favorites. How do you feel about the way this show treats its one-off characters, and do you think any of them will pop up again?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have the benefit of looking at season 3 now, and I think this discussion post was done originally before season 3 came out, or was just kind of starting up. I love how Rick and Morty deals with side characters, in that they introduce them, people want to see more of them, but I think maybe Ridley talked about it. I know somebody has said it before, how they say, like with the Meeseek stuff, they don't want to just bring back these characters. I think Harmon said it too, just for the fuck of it, right?
Right.
There needs to be a reason to have these characters come back. It shouldn't be just like, okay, well, we're creatively bankrupt. Let's bring back a fan favorite just to give them what they want and get an episode out.
Yeah, and there are certain characters that stand out that have made repeat appearances, and part of that is an extended story arc that might happen. I mean, if you look at like Bird Person and Tammy and how their relationship starts towards the end of season 1, and then we kind of check in on them throughout season 2, and by the end of season 2, we're at their wedding.
Yeah.
Whereas like there are some characters that are almost not even talked about at all, like extras that are drawn in the background of a party, but then they pop up in a school cafeteria or at another event, and so they're almost even committed to recurring extras in the show. But they're not going to force anything, and so like with Scary Terry, I could see a situation where they maybe utilize him again, but I don't know that it would feel organic in any way that they did it. I feel like they would, and any way that they tried to do it, it would feel like they're just trying to bring Scary Terry back.
Right.
And that, I feel like that cheapens the character.
So you mentioned Bird Person, same with Squanchy, right? Like that episode, if those characters felt like they should just be one-off characters, never to really be seen again, and they did become fan favorites. And so in the Wedding Squanders at the end of season 2, they brought back Bird Person and Squanchy, and Squanchy,
and we learn a little bit more about their kind of the depths of their ties with that episode as well.
Yes, yeah, because the first time you meet Squanchy, all you know is that he's an animal.
He's looking for his place to squanch.
Yeah, and so they brought him back, and as you were saying with Scary Terry, they brought him back in an organic way that like made sense for a plot. Scary Terry was arguably a main side character in this episode, and so to bring him back, you would have to create an entirely new episode around his character, unless it's like maybe just like a 2-second Morty goes to sleep and then Scary Terry's like, hey, what's going on? He's like, hey, what's up, Scary Terry?
Don't even trip, dog. Like he exists at Dream Bedrock, so there's not a lot of situations where it makes sense for him to come back, which they tried in the comics, and I think we'll mention that as we round out this segment. But yeah, I don't know, like when all the dogs take off at the end through the portal, I think it's even said like, oh, in season 9 we'll see what they're up to. Like they could easily go to a dog planet or things like that, and but I don't think that they're just taking that easy route to get to seeing these other characters.
Right. And so I want to make another point, and I think it comes up later in the discussion topic as well, but with the comics and the side characters, the comics are a really, really, really good place for fans to go and catch those cameos for these side characters. We already mentioned Scary Terry. He's in, I think, issue 5. So if you go get the trade paperback of issues
it's either 4 or 5, but it's the issue where Morty is at like a camp.
A summer camp. Mm-hmm. But yeah, all the Pocket Morty stuff, Pocket Like You Stole It, there's a bunch of those. Yeah, I got my TPB in the background. And there's a few, I think Slow Mobius is in one as well. There's a bunch of these characters that you can flesh out more. Like even I think there's a comment about Mr. Poopy Butthole. Like, who is he? Like, what is he? We know nothing about him. But if you go by Little Poopy Superstar by Miss Sarah Grayley, I think she's the one who did most of the artwork in that. Like, you learn that Mr. Poopy Butthole came from. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's really good. Like, you find out his backstory.
So for everybody that's looking to, fill the time until 2025 when we get season 4. Like go check out the comics because especially if you like those one-off characters or maybe you just want a different type of storyline. They really kind of push the boundaries even further than the show at times in the comics. So
yeah, the Vindicator. They're releasing a new Vindicator series. There's gonna be an issue with Crumbopulous Michael in it. I'm just saying, like, this is a great way to find out about the backstory of these characters, or maybe not even backstory, but just see them again.
all right.
That's it. That's all.
That's
We're gonna talk more about the comics as they come out because I started my subscription over at the local comic shop.
Oh, I guess I need to get my act together.
Sweet.
I was gonna collect them in trades, Brandon. Come on. All right, I want to talk about something that happens in this episode, and I want to say maybe the first time for sure I didn't fully catch it, and even on some of my rewatches, if I get distracted, it's easy to miss. But the way that this episode ends, it's once we have Mr. Goldenfold good and incepted, and Rick and Morty come back to see sort of the destruction that's been caused with Snowball having the rest of the Smith family captured. You then see a sequence that takes place where Morty is accepted by Snowball as his pet, and then the dogs go on to sort of take over the world. Some really awesome like montage bits happen with dumpsters of testicles and things and like human races where they're chasing a burger around a track.
Right.
But we discover that Rick has actually incepted Snowball, and it's tied these two sides of the story together, and he's gonna shut down Morty's kidneys so that to kind of create this incepted thought.
No, that was all real. You really crapped your pants. I got it. It was everywhere. Morty got it in my hands. Got some on the Dream Inceptor. Got some in my mouth. And I just, how did it get in his mouth?
Well, I mean, if you go back to that Vindicators episode, like, it can get messy. It can get real messy, right, Noob? But I kind of missed, it happened so quickly where then Snowball wakes up and realizes sort of the error in his ways, and they decide to go off and take all the rescue shelter animals with them to
We
form a
are
new
not
planet.
them. We are not them.
But what did you think? Like, some people could say this is it was all a dream situation, but it clearly wasn't all a dream. It was just a certain portion of it was a dream. How did that sit with you? Did you have an issue with it, or were you cool with it, kind of from a point, not getting to total world domination?
So I'll start by saying I don't think it was all a dream at the very end of the episode. I'll start by saying that. But also, for the longest time, I watched Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger so many times, and I didn't realize it until I was in my mid-20s that a lot of people think that Total Recall was all a dream, and that Arnold Schwarzenegger is still he's just been lobotomized, and the whole movie is just kind of an unhappy end. Like, he's having a happy ending, but it's an unhappy ending. And so I could be wrong about this episode with it being a dream, but I don't really think it matters, right? Because there's no large consequences that happen after this episode. It hadn't become serialized at this point.
Sure.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Every episode was sort of self-contained. I think it was a good way for them to show how everything would have played out if the dogs had taken over the world, but still not hamstring themselves where, like, all right, now we have to deal with, when they're doing their world building, a world that at one point for a few weeks was run by dogs. Like, okay, maybe dogs had a small uprising in the Smith community, but they didn't really get past that.
Yeah. So, okay, just in thinking about this right now, I'm already going to the Total Recall, where, okay, so so Snowball wakes up in the Morty's bed or Summer's bed.
Yeah, he's like in Morty's bed. He's still hooked up to this like mech contraption.
Yeah.
He does a total dog wake up thing though, where he kind of like pops up and like looks around, and then gets back in the suit.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then he goes and
at the very end when all the dogs are going through the portal, right? And he licks Morty on the kisses Morty on the forehead. All those dogs are coming from like the shelter, but they don't have mech suits on.
No.
So I'm already going back on what I said about 5 minutes ago. Where I'm like, maybe that dog domination was part of the dream, but
Well, I think, and we're really getting into the technical bit here, but
I don't like theory crafting that much.
The point when Rick and Morty get back to the house after they're done incepting Mr. Goldenfold, like they already have Beth, Summer, and Jerry in cages or chained up. They already have like a conveyor belt system that is producing weapons. We've already seen multiple dogs in the mech suits. So up to that point, like I don't feel like that's an incepted thing. They were busy somewhere else in incepting Mr. Goldenfold. So I feel like at that point, something happens, and then Rick manages to incept Snowball, and that's where the break is, where they don't get as far as taking over the rest of the world, but they've got a pretty solid operation set up,
right.
in the living room of the house.
Okay, all right, sure. Yeah. Again, I think when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter because
It doesn't.
After 3 seasons, we never hear of the dog domination again.
Okay.
We never hear about it again. So maybe
not
it was a dream.
yet.
Not yet. Season 4 premiere, Dog World by Justin Roiland.
I have one other question that's in this Reddit discussion points that I think we should cover, but I meant to write in an answer for this, and I still haven't come up with a good one.
Okay.
And that is, what kind of gnomes would inhabit your bondage dungeon? Brandon, do you have an answer right away, or?
The first thought I have is, I'm not an artist, so conceptualizing a crazy, sexy gnome is kind of but I did play World of Warcraft for a while, and there are some good-looking female gnomes. So, if we're being honest, maybe I grab some World of Warcraft gnomes, some Alliance characters. We have a 40-man raid right in my butthole.
In what is it? An intergenerational sandwich?
Intergenerational sandwich. Yep. And then we'll go fight Thrall because he's bored.
I don't know. My gnomes would probably be Star Wars-esque. I don't know. Yeah. I'd probably have a big Jabba the Hutt.
Oh man,
or something in there, some Twi'leks or whatever. And
I wonder what it's like to have relations with a Jawa.
Don't know, but I think we'll leave that to the Star Wars podcast people out on iTunes and Stitcher and everywhere else.
Check out the Star Wars Minute on iTunes and Stitcher.
Can't guarantee that question gets answered for you, but fingers crossed.
Okay, Travis. So we're switching up favorite bits. What's your favorite bit, man?
One of the things, it's purely visual. It's not really talked about. But when they're down in the scary Terry home environment, and the baby Terry or scary baby, whatever it is, everybody's got little swords on their hands, and the baby has just single spikes that he's playing with in his like high chair. I thought that was a nice little touch. The tiny little dangerous objects that the baby's playing with.
Yeah, that whole kind of making Scary Terry's life mundane,
Yeah.
and him like killing people is just part of his day job. Where you're like, oh god, I gotta go kill people again, and he
Out
just hates
there,
it.
not in here.
And I just that whole thing, like he drives home in like just like a beaten down
Used
four-door
car.
sedan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he can't even like afford a nice car in his dreams. A guy who can turn himself into a missile, and he's just driving like a beat up
Right.
Cadillac. And like Scary Coitus,
The-
everything was
I like
scary
the
in it.
slashes everywhere in the bedroom. Like that's just to the point where I feel like a lot of that's like inadvertent, where like you just can't help but have slashes and scratches everywhere when you have tiny swords on your hands.
Yeah. So I think that whole segment, because I grew up with Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a little bit of a weird thing. One of my friends, when I was in like 4th grade, no shit, we had a Nightmare on Elm Street marathon for his birthday party. It was like a sleepover marathon. Come on, like how old was I? And his mom was okay with this. Anyway, so I love
The
Nightmare
80s
on
were
Elm
a
Street.
crazy time, man.
I know it. And so just turning that whole thing on its head, it just got me.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
spoke to me.
Any other bits or things? Some of the lines, pretty almost every line in like the pleasure chamber or whatever it is. They're just
baby.
instant classics. The fact that Rick immediately like just jumps into it and just takes his shirt off. He's like, "I'll catch up with you after lunch." Like there's a scheduled lunchtime that he expects to have happen.
I didn't think about that. Yeah. No sexual hang-ups in the pleasure chamber.
Yeah, sexual hang-ups are punishable by death or whatever.
One of my favorite lines of the whole episode, and I've used it in probably my daily life, is you avoid getting shot every day in real life.
Yep. And then this is the origin of Don't Even Trip Dog, which gets used a lot in some of the early comics, and it was almost like they felt like this was gonna be like a big thing in the show, and then they kind of like they quickly get away from it as the series goes on, but you know it's still there. It's still part of the show.
It's a line that like I think a lot of people use because people have used it just without irony in their daily lives anyway.
Okay.
But now, like, I say it a lot. I say it a lot to people who've never seen Rick and Morty. Like, don't even trip. Like at work, they're like, "Oh, we need this document." I'm like, "Don't even trip, dog."
We got you, man. Here, take these pants.
Well, yeah, man. There's one last question I wanted to point out there, and we talked about it a little bit. The episode being heavily influenced by Stephen King, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Inception, 3 very different stories. I talked about it before, combining those things. Do you think that they managed to combine them effectively? Is the show technically science fiction?
Well, like, is this episode technically science fiction?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, I think it is. I think it is. If you look at Snowball and his brain enhancement stuff, and then all the mechs and everything, that's pretty sci-fi to me. And then the Inception portion of it, the fact that you could put a little earbud in somebody's ears and somehow get into their dreams.
Yeah.
That element to me is core science fiction and is the base that everything else that happens in the episode sort of rests on. So yeah, I would still say it's sci-fi, and I do think they tie the elements in together, and it's the first evidence in the show's history of doing that really effectively, where there have been other situations where they take maybe not exactly like matching bits of pop culture, but they will still blend those together. And sometimes they reference each other, sometimes they don't, but they find a way to fit their their story arc and make something kind of unique with it.
I want to say that when I saw the question, it said Stephen King, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Inception, and I was like, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, got it. Inception, got it. Wait, Stephen King? Where was that stupid asshole that I am? Like the Lawnmower Man reference.
Yeah.
So I just want to like throw this out, like Lawnmower Man, the movie with Pierce Brosnan and the guy who played the helicopter pilot in Lost. Like that movie is far different from the actual story, which like there's no virtual reality or anything like in the story. It's just this guy controlling pieces of machinery with his mind.
Right.
Like that's it's a super short story. It's not even like maybe 5 pages long. But yeah, it took me a minute after reading that question, like, Lawnmower, Stephen King, what? Like, are we talking about it? Where's it? Where's the it reference in there? Whatever. Anyway, I'm stupid.
Anyway. Yeah. So a couple other like quick production notes. The Snowball Dog for this is a pretty direct correlation to Justin Roiland's dogs, Jerry and Pup Pup. And if you do see a picture of those dogs, they look pretty similar to Justin Roiland's dogs. So or to Snowball.
Yeah.
So yeah, clearly a reference point there.
The dogs look so much like Snowball, and that one is named Jerry. Is
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything deeper here to explore, but I think that's funny. That one of the
I
dogs'
do
name
like
is
the
Jerry.
idea, or we don't do too much theory crafting here, but the theory that Jerry the character is named after Justin Roiland's dog. I 100% want to run with that. I'm down for it.
Yeah, and at the end of the episode, he's going in circles trying to take a dump on the carpet.
There you go.
Okay.
Anything else before we kind of close the lid on Lawnmower Dog? I mean that's our take on it. Obviously, there's a lot more to unpack in this episode, and many of you have thoughts about it. So please hit us up on our subreddit, rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com. You can add to the discussion over at the Rick and Morty subreddit, or just hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, all those places. Send us an email. We'd love to hear more of your thoughts, Unity, and the things that you really like about the episode. Maybe if there is anything that doesn't sit well with you, or you feel like you're glad they got away from in this episode. I don't know, whatever it is. Let us know your thoughts.
Is this in your top 50%, or is it in your top 25%, or is it your top 1%?
Bottom 3.
99%.
I don't like dogs. I'm a cat person.
I would have preferred it be Lawnmower Cat.
Which we almost got out of here without talking about the Dog World pitch.
Yes.
And the conversation that happens at the end of this episode as all the dogs are going off, and you kind of reference it in the opening for the podcast, but where they're talking about, wow, a world populated by intelligent dogs. I wonder what it'd be like, Rick, and this is actually a reference to the Dog World pitch that Justin made for Adult Swim before Rick and Morty ever got picked up. Obviously, Adult Swim didn't run with it, but the show itself was essentially what is described in that conversation at the end of the episode. So if it ever kind of you questioned that, if you wondered why Rick said like it'd be a really good thing, and then says like, no, you have no idea. That's the reason why. That's sort of the behind the scenes rationale for that conversation.
Behind the scenes. And also, I just throw this out there, Justin Roiland does the voice of a dog in the new Adult Swim show Hot Streets.
Oh, okay.
So no matter what, he's
can't get away from the dog roles.
He's trying to do dog world. He's trying. Oh, he's trying.
Hell or high
I don't
water.
have.
He's doing it.
Ooh, he's trying. I don't have the he's trying part.
All right, Brandon. Well, it's time for our final segment of the show. Listener
with
suggestions
no
and
music.
short outs. no music. We've had enough music. Yeah, we wanna say a big thank you to everybody that supports the show over on Patreon.com. You guys have gotten us really close to our first stretch goal, so we really appreciate that. The fact that we are almost able to fund all of our hosting through your contributions is amazing, and we're very thankful for it. Thank you for the email that we got offering to do advertisements on this podcast. We really like that Unity. You are supporting us through just listening and downloading the show, but some of you have gone a step further, and we're not interested in cutting parts of the show so that we can read ads. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that anytime soon. But yeah, thank you.
Because I mean, honestly, Travis, we write our own stuff, and I'm like, oh man, we are just reading off of a script. We could do so much better with this.
We could do so much better.
But like pulling an ad, giving us an advertisement for like laxatives or something like that. It would just be it would be bad.
Subscription boxes, things like that.
Oh, this week on Loot Crate.
Yeah, not a sponsor. Not a sponsor. But if you want to have the same T-shirt as everybody else who gets Loot Crate, there's a Rick and Morty shirt coming out in January's Loot Crate.
Sign up with code Interdimensional RSS.
Yeah, everybody sign up with that code. It's not going to get you anything, any percentage off, but maybe it'll get their attention. All right. Anyway, we did get a bunch of feedback this week that was all Blood Dome Battle League related. And I think that did take up the majority of our feedback. So thank you guys for that. We covered pretty much all of it earlier in the show.
We did get a tweet from Mr. Dominic Cobb about this episode, actually. Rick and Morty, they incept Mr. Goldenfold, and the earpiece, when he gets up to walk away, is still in his ear. So the question is, does Goldenfold realize it at some point? Does it self-destruct? Travis, thoughts? Hot take, go.
Yeah, there's one part of this question where he asks if they had to go back and get it from Mr. Goldenfold before Rick could incept Snowball.
4, 3, 2, 1. You didn't do it. That's your answer, Dominic. Travis didn't answer it in the 10 seconds.
Did I only have 5 seconds? I wasn't listening.
I gave you 10, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow, so I muted 8 to 4.
Working under pressure, I'm not great with. That's why I've never actually won anything on HQ. But I don't think Rick needed to get it back from Mr. Goldenfold specifically because I think he pulls like 10 of them out of his pocket over the course of the episode. Some of those are based in dreams, I guess, so maybe he could just dream himself extra little Inception earpieces. But I think he's probably got a full set. And I don't know if they disappear. Maybe it just fell out of Goldenfold's ear and into a bucket of cheese balls or something like that. I don't. Maybe he ate it inadvertently.
Yeah, maybe when he started, maybe like when he ducked into the toilet to eat shit because of the coprophagia, like it fell out of his ear and he didn't even notice. Maybe.
Yeah. We still have a long way to go on unpacking the interesting personality that is Mr. Goldenfold.
I can't wait for that Blood Dome battle with Mr. Goldenfold and something. Okay, we do have some reviews. Randallmeister, this is one of 2 podcasts to which I listen to get news and discussion about one of my favorite shows. Travis and Brandon are both thought-provoking and entertaining. Woo, never been accused of that.
Hey.
If you're a Rick and Morty fan, I believe Interdimensional RSS is a must-have companion piece. 5 stars.
Thank you, Randallmeister. Appreciate that. And,
wait.
Thank you.
Additionally, someone gave us a 1-star review and didn't leave any comments. So, 2 sides. Thank you to everyone for the
Thank you.
Thank you for the constructive feedback or lack of feedback whatsoever. If you have not gotten a chance to leave a review on this podcast, and many of you have, but now would be a great time. Head over to however you listen to the show. Maybe that's iTunes, maybe that's Stitcher, maybe that's, I don't know, whatever other weird RSS thing you've got set up on your Raspberry Pi that you carry around and plug your headphones into. Leave a review. it will help the show get out in front of other people, and it helps us know what we're doing right and what we need to make better for the show. So thanks for everybody doing that. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we will have the third episode. These are all the episodes that we've actually reviewed already, like in the early days of the podcast. So we finally get to do something new.
And hopefully I made an effort, and I'm sure you did too, Travis, to not try to avoid repeating some of the same things we talked about the first go around.
I think one of the things now if you're still listening, well, bless you for doing that. But
bless your heart, child.
Going through season 3 and week by week, reviewing those episodes, I think it really helped us kind of find the elements in an episode that we really want to focus on for this podcast. So I'm thankful that we have gone back and done season 1, episodes 1 and 2, and sort of had that experience under our belt. We're not doing a rolling commentary style like we tried to do the first time we attacked the pilot episode. We didn't attack any pilots. This is not any sort of situation like that. I tried to look at some new areas, and I think just going through season 3, we have a new perspective for the show and for the characters. So I think it's just made our ability to look back on some of these early episodes even stronger.
Absolutely. And we mentioned it right when we got into the episode, but we'll go ahead and taper it off with this last bit. We've been talking to the Rick and Morty subreddit mods, and we're trying to get the discussion questions from Reddit out onto the podcast and really explore some more stuff. Not just Brandon and Travis, 'cause we have voices and we're annoying sounding, and you're listening. That's amazing to me.
Kudos.
But that we get more of the community and what you guys feel about episodes and get that discussion. So make sure that we're going to be looking at the discussion posts that are already out there. Go find those discussion posts. I'll have them also in the show notes here. Go out there, make some comments, and we're going to be pulling from that. So look forward to that.
All right. I think that does it. Next week is Anatomy Park. Is that right?
Yeah, you nailed it, bro.
Classic.
Don't even
classic ep. Looking forward to seeing some tuberculosis in that episode. So.
Oh yeah.
And until then, make sure to head out and vote on next week's battle.
Centaur versus Baby Legs.
Yeah, he's got a regular legs as his partner. I don't know how that'll factor in. But yeah, until then, I am Travis.
And I am Brandon. And you know what? I'm not even gonna leave with the traditional outro. I'm gonna leave with the full version of my new hit single, Blood Dome Battle League Complete .wave.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome to the next iteration of the Blood Dome Battle League.
All of this is staying in the video, by the way.
Blood Dome. Blood Dome.
Well, that's something.